When you first get into ancient history and ancient mysteries, one of the first things you come across on the internet is how the Great Pyramid of Egypt is 8-sided and not 4. You scroll down TikTok and YouTube Shorts and there are dozens of videos on the subject, and it's usually combined with claims like the speed of light is encoded into the pyramid, how it's a scale model of half the Earth, and how it's at the centre of the landmass of the Earth, which, by the way, is actually in Turkey, not Egypt. A lot of the exciting and unexplainable facts we hear about the pyramid should really be taken with a pinch of salt, or as they say in America, a grain of salt. But what about the claim the Great Pyramid has 8 sides? Surely this is true. We've all seen the pictures on the internet, so it must be. The camera doesn't lie. Or does it? Does the Great Pyramid of Egypt actually have 8 sides? Was that the way it was designed? Well, let's find out. Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe to the channel for regular content on ancient architecture, as well as all the latest news from the world of archaeology. The shape of the Great Pyramid is a subject I didn't think I'd make a video on this channel, because the Great Pyramid obviously has a square base. It has 4 faces and 4 corner edges, and each face is triangular in shape. It's a square-based pyramid. It's not an octagon, right? Well, you can't dismiss the photographic evidence to the contrary. Just look at them. Here's the Great Pyramid, and whether the photos are taken from aeroplanes, drones or satellites, we can't dismiss or wave away the claims it has 8 sides. It looks like each side of the pyramid is concave, with a perfectly straight line running down the centre of each face. And this is not some new discovery in the modern era. Yes, it's prevalent on TikTok, Facebook and YouTube Shorts, but the phenomenon was actually first noted all the way back in the late 18th to early 19th century. Sketches from Napoleon's expedition from 1798 to 1801 show the pyramid with a line running down the centre of its faces. The great Flinders Petrie took interest in the phenomenon, and he noted it in his 1883 book, The Pyramids and Temples of Giza, saying, quote, "The hollowing is a striking feature, and beside the general curve of the face, each side has a sort of groove specially down the middle of the face, showing that there must have been a sudden increase of casing thickness down the midline." End quote. The thickness he's referring to is the missing outer casing, which he believed must have got thicker towards the centre of each face, so the pyramid could have a perfect true finish. Of course, it's important to note that today the casing stone of the Great Pyramid is missing. We're looking at the backing stones, the stones that were added onto the stepped internal core, onto which you add the casing stone. But it is of course a fair assumption by Petrie, and well by anyone, to believe the final complete pyramid was a perfect 4-sided square-based structure with no concavity or line on its faces. Where we see pyramids with some casing still intact, such as the base of the Menkaure pyramid, the casing surface has no concavity, but the exposed backing stone above does. This leads many people to believe the concavity on the faces of the backing stone is on purpose, that it's some kind of purposeful feature. And just like the Menkaure pyramid, the lines and concavities we see in the Great Pyramid are in the backing stones. And even before analysing it, if it was an original feature of the backing stones, it seems unlikely to me that this would have been visible when the pyramid was complete. But either way, the central lines and concave look of the pyramid faces is there for all to see. And as a true pyramid researcher, Petrie didn't just dismiss it. When you see it, you can't unsee it, and there must be a valid explanation. He believed it was somehow related to the way the ancient Egyptians cased the pyramid. A few decades later, and this picture would appear in David Davidson's 1924 book, The Great Pyramid and Its Divine Message, a book that is, yes, a bit woo, a bit out there, with talk of ancient prophecies encoded into the finer details of the structure. Such claims were not uncommon 100 years ago. The picture Davidson published is not based on his personal measurements and keen observations, but likely an exaggeration based on the words of Flinders Petrie. Still, it was a popular book filled with exciting yet flawed ideas, and so the image was seen by many people with an interest in the pyramids. In 1935, André Pochen noted the phenomenon in a scientific paper and how it was most visible at the equinoxes, and so he believed it was a deliberate act by the ancient architects and very much part of the original design of the Great Pyramid, that the structure acted as some kind of seasonal marker. The brilliant Maragiglio and Rinaldi, whose detailed pyramid sketches we've all seen, believed the feature was related to the laying of the casing stones, a kind of precaution to prevent the stones from slipping. There are many other authors and researchers through history I could still mention, but the point I'm trying to make is that the lines down the centre of the pyramid faces, the concavities we see, the belief the structure is 8-sided, has been sketched, photographed and discussed for many, many years. But I do have to say that many of the photos we see on the internet today have gone through Photoshop before being published. The lighting has been exaggerated on many examples to make the effect look more impressive than it really is. This outline around the pyramid is also not accurate at all, but the line is so thick that you can't question it. Some pictures also play tricks on the mind, and that's because there's a rubble pile at the base of the pyramid, and this obscures the straight bottom edge and so exaggerates the 8-sided phenomenon. To get to the bottom of the mystery, we have to look to the 2022 paper by researcher Frank Monnier. His paper is freely available to download at academia.edu, and I've linked it below in the description. And I think it's time for the facts to populate popular social networks so the next generation are not miseducated by cool pictures and repetitive claims, unchecked by content creators. And what is the truth? Well, from what we've seen, it looks as though the Great Pyramid has 4 main faces, each of which go inwards to create a perfectly straight line down the centre. Perfection, of course, being a word that often goes hand in hand with the Great Pyramid. In his analysis, Monnier went further than the old books and a handful of grainy aerial photographs, using detailed photogrammetry data and also laser scans to look closely at the Great Pyramid. Here we're looking at the western side of the pyramid, and here is the top view, and the specific surface anomalies have been highlighted. As we can see, the central indentation gets more pronounced the closer you are to the centre, but the faces of the pyramid can't be described as truly concave. We don't have 8 equal sides like this. In general, it's more pronounced at the bottom compared to the top. But in detail, each face of the Great Pyramid is actually quite irregular. It's also worth noting that not every course of masonry on the pyramid is recessed at the central line, which is strange if this is a purposeful shape created by the pyramid builders. I think what all of this shows is that we're not looking at an 8-sided pyramid by design. We're looking at a 4-sided square-based pyramid with irregular recessing towards the middle of each of the 4 faces. But why? There must still be a reason. Petrie believed it was purposeful, and it was some kind of guide to lay the outer casing stones. But this can't be correct because of the chaotic nature, as seen in the detailed scan pictures. The recessing of the faces is also not uniform, which is the minimum you would expect if this was a planned feature of the pyramid to aid construction. Some say the recessing on the faces relates to how the pyramid was built, with the hoisting of the heavy limestone blocks leading to inward forces compressing the blocks closest to the centre of each face. But pyramids have a central step core, the solid internal structure I've been discussing in recent weeks. The recessing is seen in the backing stones, and these sit on top of the step core structure, and so this idea seems very unlikely. There is also an archaeo-astronomical explanation floating around the internet. Some say the 8 sides of the pyramid is only revealed at the spring and autumn equinox, meaning it was a purposeful seasonal marker encoded by the pyramid builders. But this is not correct, because the central line and concavity is visible all year round. It's visible every single day of the year, especially around noon. The real reason we see the strange phenomenon is most likely quite mundane, and it's related to the deterioration of the pyramid on the removal of the casing stones, a process that could have been ongoing for a good few centuries. As Monnier explains in his paper, it was noted by Edmé François Jomard, a man who was part of Napoleon's expedition, that the courses of stone on the Great Pyramid were better preserved towards the edges and were in a more ruinous state towards the middle of the faces. Jomard said that the French expedition did not climb up the centre point of the pyramid faces, specifically because they were too worn and too dangerous. So yes, the concavities on the pyramid faces are directly related to the condition of the stone. They're more worn in the middle of each face compared to the edges, and this can easily be explained by the trajectory taken by falling stones from the top to the bottom, when the casing stone was being removed. As fragments of casing stone and also some backing stone tumble down the pyramid, they erode the square edges of the limestone backing blocks that remained in situ. The way stone falls from a pyramid from the top down would explain why the central section of the pyramid faces are most worn and why the edges of each faces are less worn. Each face has a triangle shape, and so there is more stone in the central worn section, more courses of casing stone to remove, so it's logical the central section of each face should be more worn. And this can tell us something about how the casing stones were likely removed, which must have been from the bottom going up, as opposed to the top down, which does make sense because the top of Khafre's pyramid is still in place. Decasing this pyramid was never completed. Today at the summit of the Great Pyramid there's a platform, and I believe it measures 11.7 by 11.9 metres. But over the years, the size of the platform increased substantially, even after the casing was originally removed. By increasing the size of the platform, it means removing stone from the top of the pyramid, and this stone would have been pushed over the sides, adding to the erosion of the central portion of each pyramid face. And I know you could say this is all just speculation and opinion, but Frank Monnier created a basic model showing the deterioration of the pyramid if the casing stones were removed from bottom to top. He looked at the distribution of impacts from falling casing stones on the triangular faces of the pyramid, and in his model the pyramid had around 40 layers. And Monnier discovered that this is the pattern created, with the red section being the area with most impacts, then yellow and then green for the least impacts. He then added to the model, taking into consideration the dismantling of the top of the pyramid, using a volume equivalent to that of the top of the Great Pyramid. Yes, Monnier admits it is a basic model, but compare this to the radar pictures of the Great Pyramid. It's clear to me that the concavity of the pyramid faces was created by the repeated fall of blocks, smashing into and eroding the pyramid as they fall. As stated, The pyramid faces are triangular in shape. There is more stone in the central section because there are more courses of stone, and so the central section will be the most eroded. I do think that Monnier has solved the mystery. And no, technically the Great Pyramid is not and never was an 8-sided monument. The phenomenon has only come about from the removal of the casing stone, some backing stone, and from the enlargement of the summit platform. It's a much more recent phenomenon. The fantastic Night Scarab YouTube channel made a brilliant video in April 2025, and I've left a link below, because he's gone a stage further in the analysis, and if you haven't already, I'd recommend watching this video in full. He builds on Monnier's basic model, taking into account that blocks would not tumble perfectly straight down the pyramid, that some of them would be deflected on their fall. He also acknowledges the fact that blocks would bounce, not to mention blocks breaking as they fall, and this would lead to secondary impacts. And Night Scarab agrees with Monnier that the concavity was created by falling stone. In Night Scarab's analysis of the pyramid faces, he also notes 3 distinctive types of damage. One is the general damage from the removal of the casing stone, a second is from the removal of the summit stones to make the top platform bigger, and a third is a central straight channel we see on all 4 sides, and he thinks they were likely dug by workers when the casing stone was removed. This is because, as Night Scarab shows, on 2 of the sides of the Great Pyramid, the central channels stop at a point where there used to be piles of rubble at the base of the pyramid, showing, if nothing else, that this central channel section on 2 of the sides could only have been created after there was already a rubble pile at the bottom. Therefore, this all implies the central channels were not part of the original pyramid design and are actually a more modern feature, likely cut into the pyramid during the dismantling of the casing stone. Their specific use we don't know. For a more in-depth explanation, please watch the fantastic video by Night Scarab and download the paper by Frank Monnier, because, in my opinion, I think they show without doubt the Great Pyramid was not 8-sided, not by design. Whether right or wrong, their explanation is logical, that the phenomenon is in fact a more recent addition, and all related to the removal of the outer casing stone. Just because a monument looks a certain way today, it doesn't mean that's the way it always was. And when we're trying to unravel the mysteries of the Great Pyramid, yes, we have to think about the way it was constructed, but we also have to consider the more recent history, and it seems the concavities on the Great Pyramid are a result of the reckless and somewhat systematic vandalism of this enigmatic ancient wonder. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.